Say, Jackie, would you come here for a second? Yeah. I got a wonderful story I'm going to share with you, and it came about as a result of this wonderful woman. Come on up. She wonders what's going on. Jackie spends half her time in the country, and she spends half her time in France. And when I started at the Myrtle Fillmore Center 25 years ago, it was quite different than this. I was all alone all week, except for Wednesdays, when Jackie would come in and take care of the plants. So we became good friends. Jackie's 72, but I have to tell you, 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, she read a book by Deepak Chopra, and he asked her to imagine what she was like 15 years previously. So at that time, she was 62 or something like that, and she imagined in her mind going back to the time when she's in her late 40s or early 50s, and how she was at that time, you know, the energy level she had and the activities she engaged in. And then Chopra said, okay, I want you to stay there. You don't have to go back to your real age. You can knock 15 years off your life. And so she did. And so when I say she's 72, that's her Chopra age. Her real age is 87. And she's very active. It's just a wonderful, wonderful inspiration. And you should meet Cheryl, because I was telling her about you not too long ago. So, thank you for being with us, and I look forward to your 73rd birthday.
Well, thank you.
Okay?
I'll be 72 in July.
Second Tuesday?
I will be 72, Oprah age, 4th of July.
4th of July. Wow. Okay. I hope you're here to share it with us.
Now you may have to give me a hand to go down.
Okay, yes, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm beginning a new series this week. It's a two-part series, and it's very, very exciting. You know, for years, it seems like, and there's been this big debate how everything came into existence, how life happened and how it evolved. And the fundamental Christians primarily feel that it was a result of intelligent design. And what that means is that there was a deity, a God, something separate from this physical dimension that was out there with a mastermind plan, manipulating everything so it would happen. And that's how everything came into being over a 6-day period, according to Genesis. Science holds the theory of natural selection, which is basically evolution, according to Darwin. And that is that there is no outside deity manipulating anything, but rather it is a life force within us that is moving us forward. And as we evolve, we shred off certain characteristics and mindsets that hold us back from becoming all that we can be. Now, in the 60s, there was a movie called The Graduate. Some of you might have seen it. Immediately, I bet you think I'm going to go to the seduction scene, don't you? I'm not going to talk about that today. In discussion group afterwards, we might get into that whole dynamic. Anyway, Dustin Hoffman played the graduate. His name was Benjamin. And at his graduation party, he was out by the pool at his parents' house, and this rich old guy comes over, puts his hand around his shoulder, and he says, "I have one word for you." And Dustin Hoffman said, "What's that?" And he said, "Plastics." Well, this is back in the 60s, and plastics were a little-known product. There wasn't that much around, but it was excellent advice for financial gain because plastics have proliferated to the point where they're everywhere. They have taken over the world. Now, what has happened with the production of plastics is that the people that invented plastic didn't foresee possible challenges that could take place with plastics. And the first one is that plastics are not biodegradable. That means that they don't go away. The average plastic bottle takes 500 years to disintegrate, and some plastics take up to 1,000 years. Now, the results, because the majority of people aren't attuned to recycling, the result is the world has taken on a glut of plastic. And it's destroying our marine life, it's destroying wildlife, it is interfering with coral reefs, it is causing problems. Huge whales are rolling up on the, washing up on the shore dead, and when they do an autopsy on them, they discover that their bellies are full of plastic. And there are certain coves in the ocean that looks like a dumping place for plastic. It's everywhere. Now, the point is, when anything happens in our world that's going to cause a dramatic change like plastic did, oftentimes there are huge problems and challenges that aren't foreseen when that is put into existence. Automobiles and airplanes are marveled as the greatest means of transportation that there is. But in the development of the automobile, I'm sure Henry Ford didn't stop and consider about human error. And that human error would eventually cause 1 million people to die in automobile-related accidents a year. Cigarettes at one time were a great pastime, kick back, relax, and have a smoke. But I'm sure the tobacco growers back then didn't take in consideration addiction. The cigarette companies certainly did, but the original tobacco growers didn't. Or the fact that it leads to all sorts of health challenges, including lung cancer, where presently I believe it's 500,000 people are affected by cigarette smoke or secondhand smoke every year. Now the point is, oftentimes, as I said before, when there's dramatic changes, we don't think it through. We don't see the whole picture. We don't stop and figure out what could this possibly lead to. All that the people that are producing these things are doing is sitting back and looking at the profit potential of this thing. So if you were at, say you were the graduate, you're at your graduation party, some rich old guy comes up, puts his arm around your shoulders. What would be the one word that he would say to you that has the potential to change our world as dramatically as plastic or the automobile or the airplane or anything else? What is the one thing that's in its infancy right now but is going to grow to a point where the future world will be something that we can't even imagine or recognize right now? That one word, you might have heard of it, you might not, is life code. One word, life code. And life code is the process of manipulating genetics. Every single living thing in the earth, human beings, animals, fish, birds, plants, insects, every living thing is here because of the DNA system, which allows it to live. Within the DNA system, there is a code, so to speak, that directs and decides what that thing is going to be. So a horse comes about because its DNA code, its genetic code, directs the cells to make a horse, basically. It's the same thing with every living thing. Well, for thousands of years, human beings have learned how to manipulate the genetic code unknowingly. Thousands of years ago in Southeast Asia, people started breeding wolves, all different types of wolves. And as a result, the domesticated dog came into being. Big dogs, they could make. Little dogs, they could make. Lap dogs, hunting dogs, watchdogs, all as a result of human beings mixing and matching various genes within the wolves. You might go to the grocery store or to your friendly health food store and see all sorts of things that are labeled natural or organic. But the fact of the matter is the kale you eat, the broccoli you eat, the cauliflower you eat is all human-made. It all comes forth from the manipulation of the DNA code within the mustard plant. It's the same thing with many other things in our world. Human beings have got to the point where we can create new forms that have never existed before. Now, the reason life code is going to make such a dramatic effect in our life because 65 years ago, two people specifically learned how to map the DNA code or the genetic code of human beings. This is a huge deal. Now, this has wonderful benefits for all of us because they can determine what gene in the DNA code does what and what's going to happen if you move that particular gene out and put another one in. So presently, they're using that to heal all sorts of diseases that were considered incurable before. With this particular process, it is very possible that in the future there will be no inherited diseases, there will be no handicaps, there will be none of the illnesses that we face today, because we can manipulate the genes within a person, even replace the DNA with healthy DNA, and create something brand new. But as I said before, with everything new that's going to create a dramatic change in our world, there are always consequences. And people really aren't taking the time to foresee what could this mean to our world as it is. With this life code system, it is possible to program the genetic code of a fetus. And you can actually determine how tall you want your baby, what color eyes you want your baby to have, what type of a muscle structure you want your baby to have, what kind of intelligence you want your baby to have. It's basically a designer baby determined by the parents. Now, the biggest problem that comes into play here is to develop this particular process, or this technology, or this science, whatever you want to call it, takes lots and lots and lots of money. Which means when it becomes made available, it's only people with lots and lots and lots of money that are going to be able to afford to design their baby, or afford to have their own genetic code manipulated and become something other than what they are. So the possibility exists that as this moves into the future, there could actually be a break in humanity where you have something that is called a superhuman, that has been genetically designed to be what we would think is perfect, and then you've got people like you and me, the normals. Unless somebody in here has lots and lots and lots and lots of money. If that's the case, I'd like to see you when the offering comes around. You can hold off on your genetic manipulation for a while. But stop and think about that. So all of a sudden we have a world, and the difference between the two human beings, the super being and the normal human being, is paramount to the difference between us right now and the Neanderthal. It's that big of a deal. It can change our world. It can create organs outside the body to replace organs inside the body, very much like we replace the faulty part in a car with a new part. It's incredible to the point that we can't even imagine the future of where this will lead. Now, just for a moment, I'd like to switch the subject to a term called divine order. And divine order basically states that the universe, the world, each and every one of us, is all controlled or under the direction of physical laws of nature. Like the law of gravity, for instance. We're all servant to the law of gravity. Divine order means that there is an order, there is a progression, an orderly progression of everything that's taking place. And that divine order means that even if there's chaos in your life and things don't seem to be going right and everything is falling apart around you, there's still a divine order to that chaos will come together to create an order that will move you forward to the life that you want to live. In the Taoist philosophy, it's called the way all things happen, the way things come to be, the way things are. And it's spiritual laws and it's physical laws that basically create the order of the universe. Now, there's also something called divine emotion. And divine emotion refers to an emotional state that allows us the greatest experience we can have as human beings. Divine emotion is the perfect recipe, the perfect blend of the emotions that we have been given to create a life that is satisfying, fulfilling, and purposeful. We all have emotions, and we all have ability or the capacity to experience all the emotions. And every single emotion has purpose and it has meaning. Think of it like a box of crayons. Every single crayon in the box has a color. And every single color is useful, it is purposeful. It has its place to a certain degree. And it's the same with emotions. Every single emotion has its place in our life to a certain degree. And that degree is what determines the benefit we receive from it. It's like a recipe of sorts. If you have a recipe, it might call for a dash of salt, and that is just right. But you don't put in a whole shakerful because that degree is excessive. And it's the same thing with emotions. Now, in the 80s, there came about a movement called the positive mental attitude movement. And it was based on arriving at an outlook of life in pulling together thoughts and feelings and attitudes and perceptions that can create the ultimate experience of life. Now, throughout the ages, spiritual masters, philosophers, and teachers have all talked about this state of mind, this state of consciousness that is the greatest experience we can have. It is one that is characterized by serenity, characterized by a deep sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, characterized by peace of mind and a strong sense of well-being. The Buddhists call it nirvana. The Hindus call it union with Brahma, which is their chief god. The Zoroastrians call it paradise. And Jesus referred to it as the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven isn't a destination that we may or may not go to when we leave this earth. It is in one sense, I guess, but in this sense, they were talking about right here, right now. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is available to everybody here and now. Not when you die, not if you're good, not if you're rich, here and now available to everybody. And that means each and every one of us in this room has the potential to move into that higher state of consciousness. And the way we do that is to balance our emotions to the degree, each to the degree that is set for the divine emotion. Now, one of the problems I had with a positive mental attitude was that they discounted the bottom half of emotions, the darker shades of emotion, and said you need to be happy, you need to be positive, you need to be joyful, you need to skip down the street whistling Dixie. And if you had sadness in your life, that was a result of your consciousness. Shame on you. There is something wrong. Sadness is not one of the positive attitudes that we're pushing for. But what they didn't realize, I feel, is that sadness is every bit as important and every bit as meaningful as the other emotions we have. Sadness plays a part in our life, and when we embrace it as something that has a purpose and a meaning, basically, it takes the suffering and the hurt out of it. Sadness is an indication that something is missing in our lives, something has left our lives that we've created a deep bond with. And when we bond with something deeply, there's a sense of exhilaration within the heart. It's an instrument of love. It comes out as an incredible joy. To lose that and not be sad is discounting, or it is a conflict with the bonding that we had. Now, this is especially important when we lose loved ones. You know, I've heard people say, you've grieved long enough, it's time to get over it. Or don't be so sad, he's in a better place. Everything is going to be okay. Trying to create a positive attitude for the person that has just lost something. And once again, that's an insult to the bond that was there. So sadness is very, very important. It's one of the color crayons in the box. It's of a darker shade, but nevertheless not to be discounted. Now, next week, we're going to continue with the second part of this. We're going to take a look at the emotions that are in our box, and we're going to take a look at the proper degree that each emotion needs to be expressed in our life. And we're going to cover three basic things that are three steps that we can take to move towards that perfect balance. So every emotion that we have is of the right degree. Nothing is missing, nothing is discounted, nothing is pushed aside, and there'll be an incredible change in your life. So as we And today's talk, I invite you to take a minute to relax as we move into meditation. And as we know that there is a divine order to this world, even at times if it doesn't seem like it. And there is a divine emotion that's available to us all, an emotion where we can move beyond the fears, beyond the anxiety, beyond the self-condemnation, move beyond all those things that are artificial in our world, and find that place of peace within us. When I move into meditation.